Good morning. Happy game day, Auburn fans. I'm Matt Scalisi. I'm joined by Wes Signer here. We are here for your Auburn pregame show. We are just under half an hour to kickoff. So we want to get in here real quick and kind of get you guys prepped for this game. It's an important week, I think, for Auburn, even though obviously the season hasn't gone the way anybody wanted it to on the Plains. But Wes, this is a unique season and situation because even though the Iron Bowl is over, normally that's where it all ends.
Right.
That's the end of the season. But now we've got 2 games left for Auburn to possibly sort of write the ending that they want to the season, or at least a better ending than last week would have been.
Yeah, I mean, usually after an Iron Bowl, you've got 3 or 4 weeks off to prepare for a bowl game, and this time Auburn's going to have to turn right back around after an Iron Bowl loss and try to, win these last couple games of the season. And if they do that, they could still get into a pretty decent bowl game. But it's going to be tough today. I mean, Texas A&M has shown that they're, pretty talented this season. Obviously, second best team in the West, top 10 team. So, I think it would be good for Auburn to show some improvement after last week's game, if they can. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Texas A&M in a minute here. But going back to last week, Wes, obviously a lot of things didn't go right for Auburn in that game. But if you kind of look at maybe some of the things that they were able to do more successfully, and look at, I guess over the course of the entire season, what are some areas that if you're Auburn today, you would like to see some sort of, actual improvement on? I mean, realistically, obviously the team is what they are at this point, but
right,
where do you think they could be performing better today? That where maybe they either showed some promise or didn't do as well as you think they're capable of last week?
I would say definitely on the defensive side of the ball. I would say for the most part this season, Auburn has looked pretty decent on defense.
Yeah.
But last week it seemed like there was several, complete disasters on the defensive side of the ball.
I definitely think the secondary surprised me last week. I thought if anything we would see Auburn be stronger there. And look, Alabama's got so much going on. It's really hard to just totally shut them down. But I think that's safe to say not their best game in terms of pass coverage last week.
No, there were a lot of just wide open receivers, blown coverages. So I would think Auburn fans would like to see that cleaned up today. But again, it's going to be tough with Texas A&M. So I think offensively, Auburn has looked decent. Bo Nix has struggled on the road, but he'll be back at home today. And I think a lot of fans would like to see him bounce back from last week's performance. Obviously, the running game has been banged up over these last couple weeks. I know Tank Bigsby is dealing with some injury issues, DJ Williams. So I think, we'll have to see how much those guys play into today's game. But that's been the bright spot for Auburn this season. Tank Bigsby, the running game seems to be what they've been relying on for most of the year. So. And
they actually have already announced this morning that Sean Shivers is going to be the starting running back today, which I believe he started last week, right? Was he the first guy on the field?
I think he was. Yeah, I think he was.
So,
he played
seniority there
a little bit. So
yeah, and I will say this: I think as much as obviously last week was a frustrating performance, I think Mark Anthony Richards showed some solid stuff too. So there's multiple guys that you can go to.
Yeah, and that was kind of his first, chance to show what he can do. I don't know how much he'd played this season before that. It might have been his first carry. I'm not sure, but it's nice to see that Auburn's got some depth at that position because they definitely have needed it these last few weeks. So we'll see how it plays out today.
In terms of Texas A&M, before we wrap up here, Wes, this is a team that obviously it's weird because I don't know that they've blown anybody away this season. I don't know anybody's sold on Texas A&M being a national championship caliber team. but they're right there in the playoff rankings. I mean, they're sort of waiting on somebody,
some kind of disaster
to mess
above
up
them.
so they can get in. They're not going to win the West unless some really crazy stuff happens over the next couple of weeks.
It would have to be pretty crazy, but
yeah, they would have to win out, and they would need Alabama to lose both of their remaining games. But Texas A&M, just to even be able to put yourself in that position, they've only got one loss on the season. It's to the number one team in the country. But at the same time, they go out there last week and they sort of have to scrape a win out against a bad LSU team. They're tough to get a real good read on. I mean, Kellen Mond is kind of a great example of that too, because he has looked really impressive this season and throughout his career at Texas A&M. But also, you've got games where where Kellen Mond has looked really unimpressive, and you wonder why he's even the guy out there starting for them. So it's a tough team to really know what you're getting going into the game.
Yeah, and obviously Auburn is pretty familiar with Kellen Mond, and they've faced off several times, and this is I think this is a winnable game for Auburn because they're at home. I know, like you said, A&M is sitting there at number 5, but it just doesn't seem. I don't know. I'm not gonna make any bold predictions or anything, but it just seems 5. A little high. It just seems a little high for.
And I'll say this too: Gus has kind of got. I don't know. I don't want to know. I don't know if I want to say he's got Texas A&M's number, but they've performed better than expected against Texas A&M the last few years, really. Mm-hmm. They haven't always been favored going into that game, and it's typically been kind of a moment. Obviously, they usually play them earlier in the season, but it feels like it's been a moment for Malzahn-coached Auburn teams to kind of defy expectations or prove themselves a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, last year's Auburn Texas A&M game in College Station, Auburn was in control for the majority of that game. I think if I remember correctly, A&M scored some late, fourth quarter touchdowns or something, and kind of narrowed the gap and kind of had a chance there toward the end. But it seemed like Auburn was in control for most of the game, and I can't remember the last, before that.
I believe they won the last time in Auburn. Yeah. It's interesting because I think this is a game that Gus could really use as a statement to say, yes, we got blown out by Alabama, but this is still a good team with a lot of talent, and we're capable of beating a top 5 program nationally. On the other side of it, you've got Jimbo Fisher, who is having the best season of his career at Texas A&M so far, and boy, would you blow a lot of goodwill by losing to Auburn in this game?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that would, it's. I mean, it's hard to think of what's going to happen in this game. Auburn's been so unpredictable this season, up and down. It seems like pretty much every week. So, I mean, we'll see. But again, if Auburn wins this game and then beats Mississippi State to finish 7-3, you can make it to a decent bowl game. If they lose this game, I don't know. I mean, I guess you could be looking at a possible 5-5 finish, 6-4 finish, something like that. And I don't think Auburn fans would be too happy with that in Gus's 8th year at Auburn. So it's going to be interesting.
It's weird. It's a weird time for there to be a game that still feels like it maybe has some high stakes to it, but that's this season. That is this very weird year for you.
I guess technically, quick question. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I'm assuming 5-5. You're still bowl eligible at 5-5.
So good question, and worth us talking about here. But
because Auburn could get that 6th win today. But.
Sure, the rules have kind of been suspended for this year when it comes to bowl eligibility, and a lot of that has to do with how few teams are playing this season. So they're not really going with the typical you have to be 500 or better to qualify for a bowl game. But it's up to the bowls who they want to take, right? So obviously the better you do, the more likely you are to end up in a desirable bowl game. And I think even though regardless, this is going to be a season that's not as strong as Auburn fans were hoping for. You'd rather be playing your bowl game probably in the state of Florida, let's say, than one of the more obscure places. Where it's tougher to get your guys motivated for the game.
Right.
So we'll see, Wes. We will have coverage of Auburn, Texas A&M coming up in about 20 minutes here on wherever you're finding this video. And we will be back. I'll be back with Lauren Sisler for the post-game show as soon as that game wraps up. So, Wes, good luck with your coverage of this game. It's an early kick. It's an early one to be.
Breakfast at the barn.
Breakfast at the barn this morning. That's right. All right. Thanks, Wes, and thanks to everybody for watching.